Hi guys, in this video I will be working on cityscape, and especially first part of the video, which I divided in two parts, will be focusing on working with the sky. My name is Irina K and I'm an artist and art educator, and welcome to my channel. I'm starting to make surface wet with big size brush. I love working on a wet surface and use wet on wet technique, and I think it's great technique to use, especially working with the sky. I just need to make sure that the whole surface is wet. I'm tilting the paper, and the light reflections from the lamp helps me to see if there are any gaps left or not. And I'm using quite intense blue color for the sky. To be specific, I'm using my Holbein Artist Watercolor set and textured paper. In this case, I'm using cold pressed Bahong watercolor block. So all four sides are glued, and it's really good for wet techniques, which I love to use. So I always prefer to buy blocks with glued paper on all four sides. Sometimes I like to operate with more than one brush, especially in the moments when I need to wash out or to smooth edge, working on gradients or shaping cloud, for example, like in what exactly I'm doing in that moment. So I like to have second brush clean, prepared, and ready for me to use anytime when I need it. I'm spreading the paint over the wet paper, and it's much easier to do if you work on a wet surface. I want to share a little bit about the reference that I'm using today. I took this photo once when I was visiting harbor in Baltimore, and I have to say that the clouds and the sky is really beautiful in this area because it's closer to the water, and um, there are very interesting shapes and like all types of clouds you could see. So when I saw that specific shape of the cloud, which reminds me like kind of like tornado or something like that, I was thinking that I definitely want to draw it one day. And when I came back with the idea to create a demo for sky drawing, that was one of the first images that came to my mind. Meanwhile, I'm returning to my second brush and working on the edge for the lighter side of the cloud and making edge a little smoother to emphasize the shape more, especially the light effect that I'm gonna capture on the cloud. I'm making blue color a little more intense around the shape, and because the surface is still wet, so it's easy to add a little bit of more color without visible brush strokes. Basically, I created a gradient using one bright color and adding there a little bit more water, and gradually making color more transparent and spreading paint all over the sky, the upper part of the artwork. And I think it's pretty handy always to have napkin or paper towel that you can use to remove some extra paint, or sometimes even to shape objects that you draw, or in my case it's shape of the cloud. And while the surface is still a little bit wet and paint didn't get dry completely, it's so easy to use washing out effects with dry brush and just remove some amount of paint from that area that you already covered. I wanted to share also with you that I find watercolor is amazing media because it makes me feel so relaxing working with the brush and moving paint, finding that way how you can control something that is not easy to control, the amount of water, amount of paint. And I feel that spending more time by painting with watercolor makes me feel more calm, more patient. And yeah, of course, I just truly enjoy to use all the ways that watercolor gives us to create something, because there are more than one way that you can make similar effects. Plus, all those incredible colors that you can mix. It is so great feeling of just watching beautiful color, how you spread it over the paper. And by the way, talking about colors, as I always recommend to prepare to think about what color palette you use before you started to work on the whole piece. In my case, I was thinking about the contrast of the light side of the cloud, the highlights, to keep them slightly warm. So I decided to use a little bit of ochre and warm yellow color. Of course, very transparent, so you don't see yellow so obviously, but it gives some warm effect. And using some cool colors in the shade, some grayish bluish that are not so obvious blue, not too obvious gray. I'm adding a little bit of violet, mixing all these colors together. Again, they're quite transparent, so it's not so obvious that the color by itself is violet. Why I think it's a great to draw clouds. It's much easier than working on the portrait because you don't have to be so precise about the shape or exact color or shade. No one would be able to compare with your reference all the time, and it doesn't have to be the same way. So I think it's easier to explore colors and techniques drawing nature. Well, of course, you can say that no way, there is nothing really easy as watercolor, but um, yes, thinking about specific structure, proportions, something like sky, for example, you don't have to worry that much about proportions or being more specific with the shape. So I would recommend you to try also exploring colors and lights and shades through painting sky, especially during very bright sunny day when the blue sky is intense. I think it's a little easier to shape, a little less tricky. Anyway, remember that you always can change some details and change the shape. You don't have to be so strictly stuck to what you exactly see on your reference, or if you work um, observing the sky. Meanwhile, I covered main surface of the sky with more intense blue color, shaping the cloud. And as you could see on the reference, that one side will be more on the side for which I started already to use warmer highlights, and the other side, which I'm working on now, should be somewhere even a little bit darker than this intense blue. So that's a little tricky how to make it lighter on one side and darker on the other side. Um, Thinking about the shades, color, and the shape all at the same time. I'm thinking also how to apply paint, creating like kind of like circle based movements, making shape fluffy and very smooth as more as I can. And I think working on textured paper helps a lot. As I mentioned in the beginning, that I'm using cold pressed textured paper, so it's adding extra fluffiness on one side. But once I tried to use hot press paper, drawing, painting clouds, that was totally different effect of how smooth actually effect on the sky, on the clouds was. So I would say if you want to have it very, very extremely smooth, it's better to use paper without texture. So hot pressed might be easier in this way to handle the fluffiness. As a next step, I'm working on the next layer of darker shades on the lower right side of the cloud. And as I mentioned before, I'm trying to create a little bit more contrast in that area, making shade darker than the background of the right side of the clouds. Some part of the paper is still a little bit wet, and here's a trick like to guess how dark the next layer you have to apply, because even the darkest part of cloud cannot be too dark. It's still slightly transparent. And the trick with watercolor that you need to wait till paint will get dry, so then you will see exact color that you use. You probably noticed how I use clean and much dry brush to smooth the borders between light side of the cloud and um, dark paint, those shades that I already created, kind of like washing out a little bit that area very close to the edge, smoothing the border. It really works well. Using watercolor, just make sure that you clean brush very often, that it's quite dry, because if you will use wet brush, it might add some more water to darker sides, darker paint, and might create totally different effects. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that I'm separating the whole demo in two parts. So in this first part that I'm focusing, working more on the sky and the clouds, and the second part of the video, which I will upload in next week, will be about the continuation of the cityscape, and I will show you how I work with water reflections. Once I will publish the second video, I will connect it with the first one. So if you're watching just first days, once I upload it, you won't be able to see next connection video. Uh, but it will be published very, very soon, as I mentioned. There are also some smaller shape clouds on the bottom, and I decided that I will work on them too a little bit, maybe not as detailed as the main hurricane shaped cloud. Not as detailed, but I still gonna use a similar color palette that I'm using, similar technique, washing out a little bit and layering a darker shade. For now, keeping buildings at the bottom of the clouds colorless. There is a little bit of the light transparent blue color I used when I was covering the whole background with the gradient, but at this moment I'm not touching buildings, which is sometimes might be tricky because you don't see that contrast, how dark will be those buildings. On the other hand, when you work with watercolor and you layering and you're starting to work with lightest and gradually coming to those details, those parts of your artwork which are the darkest one. And now returning back to the main cloud shape, I want to add some smaller detail by washing out that bright blue paint. It's actually much easier to wash out paint from the darker surface that you already have, because you will see lighter paper after washing out with a little bit more contrast. It's helping to use paper towel because you washing out a little bit with the brush, but then you cleaning with paper towel even a little bit more of the paint. I'm coming closer to complete my work on clouds and stop adding more details before I continue to work on the rest of the artwork. So thank you for being with me, guys. Don't forget to like this video if you find it helpful, and see you in the next video. Bye. Have an artful day.